Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Woodard Report podcast. I am really excited about today's conversation. So, we're joined today by Peter McCarroll, who is the founder of the AI Accountant and Fuel Accountants. And Peter has been doing some really interesting things with AI, but even more than the interesting things that he's doing, he's actually democratizing the knowledge and the know-how that he's experienced over the last several years with AI, and he's sharing it with other accounting professionals, which I just am so pleased that you're doing that, Peter. So welcome. And could you tell us a little bit about your journey, about Fuel Accountants and your journey with AI, just to let the audience know kind of where you're coming from?
Yeah, well, thanks, Heather. It's great to be here. Um, I'm a CPA. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. So I'm a CPA in Canada, but I'm also a chartered accountant in New Zealand, which is why I talk funny. And so I started my practice, back in the early 2000s in New Zealand. And then I'd married a Canadian 30 years ago. And so we eventually decided we were going to come back to Canada. And so then I started my practice totally cloud based. I was right on the cusp there of that. Xero was brand new. Xero, of course, is from my hometown, and so I made the decision to go all in on cloud technology. And this is back in 2010. And so I was actually at the second ever XeroCon. I missed the first XeroCon by a matter of weeks before realizing they just had it. I'm like, man, I would have liked to go to that. Of course, back then it was 50 people. So in Taupo, New Zealand, they can't even hold the conference in New Zealand anymore. It's just too big. So yeah, right on the cusp of that, and then moved to Canada. Just continued that with Xero only for a while. Now we serve clients in both Xero and QuickBooks, but still totally cloud based, totally virtual.
That's amazing. And, with your Xero expertise, I mean, you said you started kind of with them in 2010, missing the XeroCon. In 2012, you won the Xero MVP award, which is
Yes.
amazing. So for 2 years, that's quite the accomplishment. And then you just won another award last year, the Xero Mid-Size Firm of the Year in Canada.
That's right.
So congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
it sounds like you've had a really long and fruitful relationship with Xero.
Yes, I have.
So
Yeah.
wonderful. Wonderful. So, can you tell us a little bit about, cloud accounting was the big thing, right? So, I worked on the Intuit or QuickBooks training team starting in about 2014, and I was one of the original authors of the QuickBooks Online certification. So, I
Hmm.
was very much part of where you were the part of the cloud accounting story in Xero. I was very much part of the cloud accounting story with QuickBooks. And that was a huge change for a lot of firms. And when we were talking about going to the cloud, people really resisted. They
Yeah.
said, I can't put my client's financial information in the cloud. I'm going to be compromising the security. I need to keep that safe on my server in the closet over there. And now we're in the age of AI. And I feel like that is, in some cases, very similar, right, to what we were going through with cloud, but in other cases, much, much more disruptive, and it's moving so much faster.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your journey with AI? Because you've really dug into it, and
Mm.
just kind of explain, where'd you start? What are you seeing?
Well, it's a visceral story. It was May of 2024. I just finished, the busy season. April 30th is the personal tax deadlines for filing in Canada. So we're just past that peak. And, I was taking a day to relax and recover. And I've been listening to some podcasts. And, I've been hearing about this AI stuff for quite a while. And go back to what I talked about. Starting with Xero. Right at day one, we were bleeding edge technology adopters in our firm. And I was listening to this podcast, and it suddenly struck me that we were no longer bleeding edge. Our tech stack has been stable for 10 years. And the only change we've done in 10 years is to say, yeah, we'll accept QuickBooks, but reluctantly. Okay, that was our only change, significant change. And what it made me realize is that one of our core values, we have some immutable laws, and one of them is lead with technology. And I realized that we were no longer leading. We were now an also ran. same tech stack as 90% of cloud-based firms. Okay, so that was my first thing, and then I started thinking about where AI is going. I've been listening to some podcasts, as I said, and because I'm old enough where I've seen it, every single one of these transitions. I remember the first spreadsheet. I remember the first desktop computer, and I've seen these things happen. And I'm listening to what they're saying in the pods about where AI is going and what it might do to the accounting profession. And in my gut, I knew that was possible. And then I had this visceral image. And it was of me sitting on the side of the road with my head in my hands crying. And in front of me was my desk and my computers and my papers flattened. And as I look to the left, there's this truck driving away, having run over my business.
Wow.
Yeah, visceral, isn't it?
And that is very powerful.
Yeah, and of course, the truck is that metaphor for AI. Sometimes I tell the story using a tank, but in that moment, it was definitely a truck, and the truck is AI. And I made the decision. I said, "Who do I want to be? Do I want to be that guy sitting on the side of the road crying because someone else destroyed my business, or do I want to be the guy driving the truck?" And if that means I have to destroy my business to rebuild it, I would rather that I be in charge of that than someone else. So that was the day I decided that we need to step into AI.
Wow. And so 2024 seems, in one sense, it seems a long time ago.
Yes.
In reality, it's not that long ago at all. In fact, in 2 years, you've gone from recognizing the problem to being a leader, solving the problem, and leading, the profession through this transformation, which it is, I would say, I believe the most disruptive transformation that we will go through as a profession in the foreseeable future. So I love that. And I've been saying, that AI is a runaway train.
Yeah.
And you either got to get on and try and get control of it, or you're going to get flattened by it, as you said.
The way I describe that is I say the train has left the station. The all aboard has already sounded. It's picking up speed and it's not slowing down.
That's right.
But if you're still standing on the tracks, you are not going to suffer that train very well. If you can jump on board, you'll do okay. But if you're standing on the tracks or believing that this won't affect you, I've got some bad news for you.
100%. And what I would love to say before, I don't want to scare anybody, is it's not too late. It's definitely not too late. We're still really early in this, but you do have to get on board, like you said, for sure. Yeah, 100%. So you've transformed your firm with the AI. So you're leading the way in practice, but then you've also developed a training for other accounting professionals and firms to help get on the train, right? To give them some direction. Can you talk about building that system or that training? Did you build that internally first to train your team, or was it something where you'd gone through the journey and said, you know what, I really need to lean into the profession and help them get on the train?
A bit of both. So, we started implementing AI. We trained our staff. I even started training my clients on AI, and we did the typical "here's how you use ChatGPT" training. And we got everyone a license, and we told them we wanted them to use it, and we struggled to see significant change within the practice. And we targeted a few things, and we made some things more efficient. We made some things better, but it wasn't transforming the practice. And that's when I really started thinking about, when is this going to happen? And what do we need to do as a firm to be ready for what's coming? And that's when I started writing much more aggressively about it. I'm a long-term thinker. I'm not about tools and tactics by themselves. One of the things I believe is that if you don't know what problem you're trying to solve, no software product will solve that for you. And I got this realization walking around. I went to AICP Engage. I went to Scaling New Heights, and I'm looking at all these vendors, and every one of them selling an AI solution. And my question was, what problem am I trying to solve? Because if I go and buy that solution, yeah, I'll get some efficiency. I'm going to spend a ton of money and I might not solve the most important problem. And
Right.
that's what led me to say we need a different type of training program for firms that's not about skill acquisition by itself, it's about leadership. So I described the practice transformation program as it's not a program about technology, although it is. Okay. But my goal is not to teach you how to use a tool. My goal, it's a leadership program. It's for firm leaders, it's for AI champions, those leading the charge within the firm, to help you think through what is happening and what is our response to what is happening and what do we want to look like in 2 years so that we excel and add value to our clients and not be the guy on the side of the road crying because a truck just rolled through my business.
I love that. And that's absolutely the right way to go is you have to learn how to navigate in this new world before you can start making decisions. And Joe Woodard and I, we actually did a AI leadership training at Brown University back in 2024. I think it was the spring of 2024. And that was when we were just digging into the
Mm-hmm.
GPTs, just digging into, changing the transformation from I'm going to Google something to I'm going to use a GPT to research something and gather data. And they were talking at that time about, the strategy part of it. And they said, this is going to move fast. But even at that time, the leaders, the actual people that are creating it, were saying, but we don't know how fast it's going to go,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one of the big things that I always call out that honestly, I don't want to say terrifies me, but it makes me take pause, probably a large pause, is that we still don't have regulation,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the US and Canada. We don't have regulation around AI. We have best practices. Our professional organizations are doing the best that they can to give us guidelines, but we still don't have solid regulations on how are we supposed to be using this? How do we safeguard our data? What is appropriate use? We've got litigation now for intellectual property issues. There's just so much we don't know, but we still have to get on the train.
Yes.
So it is. I love that you're teaching the strategy, becoming informed about what is an LLM, what is an SLM, understanding the technology, what it can do, and actually you've got to look beyond what's available today.
Yeah.
And I think that is what your program leans into, is not just looking at what Claude and ChatGPT and Tax GPT and the things and digits and the programs that are on the market today, but doing exactly what you did in 2024 of looking years down the road of what is the potential of this
Yeah.
and how am I going to build my leadership skills and structure my firm and my processes so that I can easily implement these new technologies and
Yeah.
be prepared for it. And you and I had talked when we first met about also keeping in mind the business model of your firm, and you've been writing a lot about that,
Yeah.
about
Absolutely.
how
I think that's the most important thing. This is the problem we have to understand. Buying technology does not solve our business model. It doesn't change our business model. In fact, it could be worse. Buying a tool is a way of trying to encode our business model into someone else's system. That may be the exact opposite thing that you need to do, because now you're locking in 2025 practices into a 2030 technology. Well, that might backfire. And as far as timing is concerned, I was at AICPA Engage and was pleasantly surprised at how progressive they were. Let's just put it that way. But their opening keynotes, they're talking about their Vision 2040, and I'm like, you might as well be talking about traveling to Mars. That is so far in the future, and technology is going to change so much that it's impossible to plan for 2040. And then I went to some sessions. They were talking about the firm of 2030. I'm like, okay, that's a little more achievable. That's too late. If we're planning for a firm of 2030, we might not survive. I'm thinking that in terms of CAS practices specifically, that we've got one season, maybe 2 seasons, before the work as we know it will have fundamentally changed. So I'm thinking the firm of 2028, 28, 29, and I would absolutely love to be proven wrong. I would love it to be 2030.
Right, right.
2040 is on the table at this point, but I'd love it to be 2030. But here's what I know for sure. Those firms that are ready for 2028 will excel. And those firms that are not ready for 2028, even if I'm wrong and it's late, they will be the ones that will struggle. So I see this as being an imperative, not because it's definitely going to happen, but because the faster you start thinking about your firm and transforming it, not just adding software to it, the more likely you are to be versatile enough to cope with these changes that are coming.
So, how does a firm do that? So, how does a firm do it? What is the process that you recommend to make them AI ready?
Yes. Well, first of all, you got to understand what are the market forces. One of the sessions in our program is called the burning platform, and it's talking about there's 4 pricing pressures that firms are under. There's the technology pressure, there's the human resources pressure, there's all sorts of things that we've all talked about ad nauseum in terms of what's happening in the marketplace. But if we don't understand what those pressures are going to do both to our customers, that's the piece we often forget, and to our marketplace and to our firm, we don't know what problems we're actually trying to solve. So the first thing is you've got to get really, really clear on what is the problem we need to solve. It's not a technology problem in and of itself. What is the problem we need to solve? And what do we want to look like on the other side of that solution? If you don't make that decision, nothing you do will get you there. Okay.
Right.
Once we've decided that, then you go through and say, what are the steps I need to take to position myself for that? And that's what the rest of our program is all about. We go through human resources and leadership. We go through the technology. We look at the practice brain, we call it. What is the stuff that you need to create to make this viable? We look at workflow engineering. There's 9 steps that we go through that position a firm, and it's all thinking work. It's where do we want to be? And then the plan. So that's the process that we teach.
I love it. I mean, and having a process is that you have to have that. That's the foundation of getting you from point A to point B. So you've written about the month end close, and you've looked at digits, you've looked at puzzle, you've looked at Meridian by Pilot. I was reading articles on your website, and you've really dug into those. So you've written that the month end close is now under fee pressure from 4 directions at once, and that a firm can out argue any one of them, but not all 4. So what are the 4, and why can't we just keep the efficiency gain quietly the way we did with cloud?
Yes. So the 4 pricing pressures we have are a lot to do with our client and the market, not with us. So the first pricing pressure is obviously the software tools that we use ourselves. Okay, QuickBooks came out with a $10 a month-end close add-on to their product. They just valued the work that you charge hundreds of dollars for at $10. We have new competitors in the marketplace. This is price pressure number 2. Digits, the one I always use is Synthetic, by the same guy that started and failed at Bench. Okay, so maybe we factor that reliability in to that example, but it is illustrative of what's coming. He said, we're going to create a $49 a month product that closes the books. And this is the Sequoia manifesto that came out in March. One of the biggest VC firms in the country said that the SaaS products are looking too low. Look for the service, not the software. Okay, and their first example was accounting. Number 1 example of the market to disrupt was accounting, and then literally a few weeks later, Synthetic comes out and says our target is a $49 a month set of closed books, no humans involved. Now, is that realistic? Maybe not, but these are the pricing pressures, and this is what the market hears. And as we all know, the market reacts on perception, not reality. If our clients are hearing $49 close, and we're trying to charge them $7.99 a month, they are doing the math and they're asking, well, what's the difference? Okay. You then also have the pricing pressure, and again, this is all perception. When we start using AI to get efficiency, the market expects that they will get discounts because we've sold them for so long on this hourly billing rate, and all of a sudden we've done something that lowers our time, and they then think that, well, that should mean I now get a lower fee. Okay, so that's another pricing pressure. The IRS just did not do us a favor the other week by putting a line in their document that said explicitly that savings from AI should be passed on to the client. Now, I've heard a lot of commentators say, oh, well, anyone on the hourly billing model, is at risk. Yes, they're right. They are at risk. But that statement from the IRS talked nothing about hourly billing.
No, it didn't.
Savings. So you could be a flat fee biller, and your lead regulator, if you're a tax service provider at least, is telling you they expect you to reduce prices. That's huge.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think that one of the things that I keep in the back of my mind, and I think it's important for all of us to do, is to look at the market, to look at our clients, because our clients are actually, a lot of our clients are behind.
Yes.
They're not aware of what's happening in our industry. They don't quite understand. Yes, they see, the TurboTax ads that, we can, you can get your taxes done for free or whatever, and then it's easy. So we've been battling against that, that narrative for a long time.
Yeah. Well, that creates now the fourth pricing pressure, which is new competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I've been running my firm for 15 years. I've got a particular cost structure. Now, what's the cost? What's the barrier to entry of a new person coming in today and setting themselves up on one of these amazing new platforms like Digits or Kick and charging half of my fee? Okay, so that's that other part of, the clients are behind. Maybe they don't even see all these other ads and they don't think about the AI stuff, but all of a sudden they're now being pitched by another accounting firm who's willing to do this job at a third of what I'm willing to do it as. That's the fourth pricing pressure. And that is going to accelerate as more people enter the market. And because the cost of entry now is so low, in fact, it's non-existent really, people can get out there and win business with ultra low fees. And the amazing thing now is the technology almost, I won't say will, is almost supports that still profitably.
Right.
And if you've got low overhead, zero overhead, you could probably survive at that for a while. Now, will it kill you off? Probably. but just look at what Bench tried to do. But that is the fourth pricing pressure. And all these things, you can argue around any one of them. But those four things hitting at the same time are a huge problem.
I read one of your articles about the AI client meetings and should agents run it. And it was a great article. And I'm going to read a quote from that or a passage from that article. And it really hit home because it's a wake up call, right, to all of us. So you said agents can run the meeting that was only ever information transfer. So here, what you're talking about is two agents joining a meeting, and we see it all the time. I get on a meeting and there's 4 AI bots and there's two humans in the room, right? So that's what we're talking about. So I'm going to continue on. They can't run the one that wasn't, right? That was not information transfer, meaning where you're talking about information, but you're talking about the decision making of the digging into the details or the things that come up during that meeting. So the uncomfortable question isn't whether agents could replace your client meetings. It's whether yours were ever more than a meeting they could replace. And I love this, Peter, because that is the wake-up call to look at, are you meeting with your client just to get information? Are you meeting with your client just to tell them about a new tax, treatment, right? Because if that's all you're meeting with them for, you are really at risk, because where the magic is all the things that aren't in the books, the things that aren't related to the information, or at least the the business information, asking about the relationship of the client. What are their goals? What are their dreams?
Yes.
What happened last week with their kid or their spouse, right? That's where the magic happens. And that's where the true value that we are bringing to our clients lives.
Yeah.
So I love for you to dig into that and share with us, how do we lean into the humanness,
Yeah.
right? Because
So,
that's what's going to save us, right?
exactly. That comment came out of this reflection of what does a firm of the future look like? If our clients are interacting with their bank and all their other providers using their AI agents, should they be able to interact with us in that same way? And my answer was yes, of course they should. In fact, a lot of what we do is transactional. It makes a lot of sense. And then the question was, what do we lose and what should we never automate? And that's where that thought process came out of. And I think this question of what should we not automate is super important, especially for these young guys out there starting their own firms today, because their temptation is to automate everything. They don't want to make a phone call if they don't have to, but
Mm-mm.
that's how you have clients that move anytime, with because it's a low commitment firm. There's low contact, there's low relationship, and it's that relationship aspect. And Heather, it goes way more than just knowing about the wife and kids or the husband and the kids or the family situation. That is important. It's about being that trusted advisor and going beyond the mere compliance and, hey, we got your documents filed. One of the things that I've written about and I'm talking about a lot more is this move from the rear view mirror to the dashboard to the windshield. And
Hmm.
as accountants and CPAs, we've lived the last 200 years as the rear view mirror.
Right.
Okay? Last year's tax return, even last month's monthly financials, that's still rear view mirror. Well, we're moving to a world, and I expect to be able to confidently say by the end of this year that it has arrived, that accounting is near real time. Okay? Transactions coded as they come in, 1 to 2 day close. Okay, your dashboard now tells you the current state of your business, not merely the historical state of your business. And so how fast am I going? How much gas is in the tank? Okay, and that's good information. But what is really information is what is on the windscreen. It's where we're going. What is our destination? I talk about the heads up GPS. Being able to say, hey, this is the route we're on, and having someone sit beside you and say, are you sure that's the right destination? You've put in Ontario, but did you mean Ontario, Canada, or Ontario, California? Um, you know, uh, by the way, just around that corner, that's where the police like to hide with their radar gun. Or I was on this very road just last week, and there are massive roadworks. We should do a detour. Okay, that's the kind of relationship that business owners actually need. And now we have the ability to offer that to them almost at the same price we used to charge them for just compliance. And I know which one most accountants would rather be doing. They'd rather be giving advice to their clients, not filing their forms. And my conviction, my admonition, if you will, in the training program is that we are going to get savings in these fees. If we try and hold on to them and just increase our profit margins, we will probably be price pressured out. It's not a sustainable position. We are not going to be allowed to keep those margins like we did when we moved from desktop to cloud. Okay. But
Absolutely.
if we turn that into how do I add value to my client, we will be allowed to keep them.
Yeah, no, you increase value, you increase price, right? It's interesting because I was at an industry event this week, and they had an economist speaking, and that's exactly what they were talking about, was with the AI, infusion into the accounting industry, that the margins are just, they're on this incline.
Yeah.
And and it's not just accounting, it's across all industry, right? As AI is implemented, the margins will get higher. So he was talking about how the market will react to that. And it's exactly what you just said. They're going to expect that those margins, that the pricing pressure will drive it down. So you have to give additional value, 100%. So, it's funny when you were talking about the whole car, being in the car and being the windshield and the dashboard and then the windshield. It made me think of self-driving cars, right? And how self-driving AI really is the self-driving car, and we actually have the ability to be in the self-driving car with the client and adding that additional value. So, um, anyway, interesting. So another thing that was a big takeaway, I was reading another one of your articles, which was the AI champion in the accounting firm, what to do and what to ask. And so this one I loved was you gave some advice. I'm not going to read it here. I'll put it in the notes for our listener guide. But you talk about how we can leverage AI to actually document what we've done, right? So when you're experimenting with AI and you come up with a solution and something works, you actually give us a roadmap on how do we make that repeatable and how do we democratize that to the rest of our team. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact things I said in that article, so you'll be able to stress test me on this on the fly. Yeah, so this is where most firms are. They've given out a license, they've given some training, people are out there doing stuff, but there's no cohesiveness in what they're doing. And one person finds something that works really well, and someone else is struggling to understand what to do. And earlier this year, Claude started it with this whole idea of a skill. On the Chat GPT side, it was a custom GPT. Okay. But this idea of a skill is a way of democratizing and sharing the results of your work. So I always say to people, start with do an exercise, do it really well, do it in one session. Okay. When you think you've got to a position, you go, hey, this is working. I tell people to run something I call a retrospective. You ask your AI 3 questions and it answers the questions. So these are not questions, it asks you. What worked well? What didn't work well? And what could we improve on next time? Okay. And you let it tell you what it think worked well and what didn't. And you'll find it'll tell you stuff. You go, oh yeah, I forgot that was a problem. I forgot that we had to do that 3 times. Okay. And it'll tell you, and it'll tell you what I would do differently next time. And that's the moment you say, let's write this down as an instruction we can reuse next time. And even if you're just doing a task for a single client, that little process takes maybe 3 minutes. But if you know you're going to come back and do that task later, again, it's a monthly thing. Maybe it's just one client, but that extra 3 minutes is going to save you 30 minutes next time. And then there's 2 ways you could use that. So one is, I'm a big Claude user. You can now create that as an instruction file. It's just a text file called a markdown file. And you just place that in the folder that you are working in. And next time you want to execute that, you say, find the instructions for ABC and run that. Okay. And it'll look in the folder and go, oh yeah, I found this file. Is that the one you want? Yes, it is. Go. Okay. Then the other thing you can do is you can save it as a skill. And the difference between an instruction file and a skill is an instruction file lives in a location. A skill lives across your locations. And skills can be shared a little easier than a single text file. Okay. And so you could now create a skill. Let's say you frequently have to look up foreign exchange rates. So you can create a skill that tells the system where to find foreign exchange rates, how to interact with that website. Maybe there's an API or an MCP that it's allowed to use. And so it will know how to go and get those foreign exchange rates. Now, that's not going to apply to one client. You're going to want that available for multiple clients. So you save that as a skill. And then no matter what client you're in, you can just say, please get me the exchange rate for January 27th, 2026. And it knows how to go and do that. And then depending on the plan you're in, you can now share those skills across all users in your organization. So now everyone has access to that shared knowledge and can repeat the same task without having to go through the learning that you went through the first time.
Yeah, it's incredible. We use Claude here at Woodard, and we're using skills and the instructions, and it does take time to get used to it, to get used to the opportunities and how it works, and actually really leverage it the way that it's meant to be leveraged. And so skills have been incredible, and communicating with your team too. Talking about, has anybody done this before, is super important right now.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that having a strategy for that as well is amazing. So we are at time, Peter. This has been incredible. You are a wealth of knowledge. I just want to, say to our listeners, Peter has an incredible blog where he's publishing articles about AI, about how he's used AI in fuel accountants and talking about experiences. And there's just a wealth of knowledge out there. Really, really great content. So you can find that at the AIaccountant.ai. And I encourage you to go and check that out frequently because it is really a gold mine of information if you're looking to get started.
People can go there and sign up for our newsletter. It's not spam. We send you one new email a week. That email gives you the highlights of my weekly roundup. I do a 10-ish minute video every week on what's happening in AI and the industry, accounting industry, that affects CAS practices. It's not about the tools, it's about the big picture stuff. And so
Love it.
every week you get this email highlighting that. You can go and look at the blog, you can look at the video. It's on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. And then anything else I've published during that past week gets indexed on that same page.
Wonderful. And yeah, well, this has been incredible, Peter. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And I hope we should circle back and do another one in 6 months or so. And I'm sure things are going to look vastly different.
Totally different. Absolutely.
So, all right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for today's podcast. And we'll see you next time.